to the PHLY Eagles podcast, an emergency podcast. Bo Wolf, Fran Duffy, Zach Berman here to react to the official departure of Josh Sweat from the Eagles. You're the one sitting next to Zach, Fran, so you're going to be the one, if he has to cry on a shoulder, it's going to have to be yours. But I will come and comfort you as well if you need it, Zach. How are you feeling?
Well, I had time to process this, Bill.
Okay.
So this was one that we expected for a few months now.
Yep.
And interestingly, the Cardinals were a team that had come up, like even during the season.
Yeah.
Watch out for Arizona. Watch out for Arizona. So he goes to Arizona. Look, I know it's been a joke for 6 years with us. I called Josh Sweat's breakout year probably like 2-3 years too soon. But the reality is this: he's a good player.
Yep.
He a 7-year pro who's been pretty consistent ever since he became a starter. I don't think he's a top of the league edge rusher, but I think he's near the top of the league. And I think when you look at the frame, when you look at the versatility, when you look at the fact that he plays all three downs, and this might be a kind of a controversial statement relative to or a statement that goes against the perception, but the durability, because he is more durable than reputation suggests. Good for Josh Sweat to get this type of money.
Now, the money, to be specific, 4 years, $76.4 million reported by Adam Schefter. That's $19 million a year, 41 guaranteed. That's probably borderline third, fourth comp pick worthy for the Eagles.
Yep.
So they'll be, they're happy he's getting paid. But I think you think of Josh Sweat, and he could not have gone out on a higher note. Like 2.5 sacks, arguably the Super Bowl MVP in his final game with the Eagles. He'd never had 2.5 sacks in a game in his entire career. What a final impression. What a final stanza for Josh Sweat after 7 memorable and productive years with the Eagles after being a 4th-round pick.
Yeah, and to me, though, when I look back on Josh Sweat's career, obviously you think about the Super Bowl performance for sure, but to me, I also look at it as a story of development, because this was a guy who redshirted his first year, basically did not play his rookie season. In year 2, you started to see flashes. In year 3 was when he had that big breakout that ZB predicted. And I think when you're looking at guys taking that step, we have to remember that development is not linear for every player. Yeah. Development is not instant for everybody. You're not expecting every single rookie to come in and have an impact. We saw that this past year with Nolan Smith, where people were down on Nolan Smith. He didn't do anything as a rookie, and then he's playing late in the preseason in year 2. Then he goes on and he's one of the better defensive players for the Super Bowl champion Eagles. So I think when you look at players like Josh Sweat, I think of him, with some of his classmates like Jordan Mailata, is you got to give these guys some time to be able to develop. And I'll ultimately think of that when I think of Josh Sweat.
We could make this a longer conversation because, he came in as a 21-year-old.
Yep.
That's part of the discussion that we always have about age. And so the Eagles were willing to give him that runway. But yeah, I think you're right. Like, there are so many different versions of Josh Sweat that we all saw over the past 7 years, right? Like, the guy who couldn't get on the field as a rookie and is developing behind the scenes. There's the guy who's showing all the tools and, like, in training camp is just the last one off the ball every snap, and like he just can't time the snap right. Then he turns into a really productive pass rusher. Then he becomes like an all-around player who is not just a one-trick pony against the pass, going high side and using his speed. He's a guy who can win with power, as he did in the Super Bowl, and also is good against the run. And so, yeah, I think it's a great story of development, and also that's not just the staff; that's on him for being the one to develop himself.
But the all-around part of it, I'm glad you brought that up, because look, I remember talking to Jonathan Gannon 2 years ago.
That's very important
about Sweat, and like that's what he kept coming back to. Because look, I harp on the frame, the pass rush skills. You talk about when Howie Roseman uses the term "tools in the body." You're talking about a player like Josh Sweat, because when he came in, you're talking about tools in the body that you have to refine. Like you're talking about the age profile when they drafted him. But I remember talking to Gannon, and Gannon kept harping on like the physicality that he played with and the ability to play against the run, the ability to be like a real tough physical football player. And I don't know if when coming out that was the reputation. I'll defer to you, Fran, but I think he was like 6'5", 240 at the combine. He ran 4.5. He had, he had the length, he had the vertical, he had everything you look for in that position. But he added weight. He really learned how to play. And the thing that always jumped out to me, and this is kind of why I was so bullish on him, it wasn't necessarily my eyes. It was talking to, I remember Chris Long, talking to Lane Johnson, and these guys were like, Josh Sweat is going to be awesome.
Yep.
And when veterans who've been around say that, you're like, all right, they're not just puffing up a teammate here. Like or I should say, pumping up a teammate. They can see it, and that really came to bear. Now, it didn't come to bear in terms of like a 15 sack guy, but actually, his high watermark was 11 sacks during the regular season. If you combine the playoff sacks this year, he was double digits, but he's been consistently, 7, 8, 9 sacks, and $19 million is a lot for that. But I thought he was as good of an edge rusher as there was on the open market.
Now, I don't want to put a ceiling on Josh Sweat because it does feel like now he is this fully formed player. I don't know that the Cardinals are going to be getting an extra jump from him, but as you said, he's only 28 years old. He's one of the better pass rushers on the market. I'm curious. It's interesting that it's a person who knows him that's signing him, and Jonathan Gannon, because I do think part of the story with Josh Sweat is we probably make too much of the knee, but you do have to know how to handle his snaps and stuff, because we saw in 2023 he was playing a ton more snaps and then sort of cratered production-wise the second half of the season. Even this year was much less productive the second half of the season until the playoffs when he came around. And so I think probably needs to go to a team that understands him and how to best use him.
No, I think it's a good point. And honestly, too, when we talked about this, when we did the show after the Super Bowl, going back and watching those sacks, I mean, one was against Travis Kelce, where Kelce was, a couple seconds late off the ball, and the other, the running back, went to chip him and bumped him 2 gaps inside. And so that, obviously, you don't take anything away. 2.5 sacks in the Super Bowl is huge. But to your point, down the stretch, the last several games, Sweat was not as big of an impact as he was in the first half of the season. So I do think there's a little bit of buyer beware. There's a little bit of risk here when it comes to the Cardinals side of things. But, clearly they have enough faith. If they're going to pay him to that tier, at that level of the market for Josh Sweat and his services, that's just shy of what Greg Rousseau got this weekend from the Buffalo Bills. And Rousseau's got, honestly, a similar kind of profile when he was coming out. So I think when you're looking at Sweat, the Cardinals are hoping that he's able to match what he's done over these last couple of years.
2 things to add to that. I hear what you're saying with the Super Bowl. Now, that said, Zach Bond's interceptions caused by a Josh Sweat pass rush that doesn't show up in the stat sheet per se.
Yep.
But what's interesting to me is that a year ago, any team could have had him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Eagles were trying to trade him.
That's part of the story here.
Yeah, the Eagles were trying to trade him. They forced Josh Sweat to take a pay cut. It's a similar situation in Dallas Goedert now. He didn't have guarantee, or in order for him to stay in Philly, he had to take less money, and they guaranteed this year, and it was to let him hit the open market. He's never hit the open market in his career. He signed an extension with the Eagles in year 4 before he was even like a full-time starter with the team. So I know he was eager to hit the open market. The year he had put him in this position. I need to look at all the edge rusher contracts, but my guess is, I guess Khalil Mack's the highest per year, but Josh Sweat might be the highest total value of any of the edge rushers who signed this week.
I think for
Good
changing
question.
teams, in terms of changing
was
teams,
less on an average, but it might be the guarantees.
Guarantee might be more.
It's interesting. And now where this leaves the Eagles on the edge, a position that they obviously care about, even if Vic Fangio is willing to play his top guys a little bit more, is you've got Nolan Smith, you've got Jalex Hunt, and maybe you think he's ready to take on that number 2 role. I think more likely the Eagles would like to bring somebody else in. And then, as Vince asks about in the chat, on the roster, they have Bryce Huff. Do you have any sense, Zach, of how the Eagles feel about Bryce Huff as part of the edge rusher rotation at the moment?
I don't think they're planning on Bryce Huff to be as – I think it's almost similar to James Bradbury last year, where it's gravy if he's a contributor. Now, there's still time if they were to trade him, if they were to move on from him. Howie Roseman says the book has not been written on Bryce Huff, and there might be validity to that. I don't think he's a scheme fit. I'll defer. Fran had him very low in our Flu World Order rankings, and it's just I think it probably makes sense for both sides if he goes somewhere else. But that contract is difficult to move at this point. So I think that even if Bryce Huff is back, the Eagles kind of build this depth chart, not planning on him being a major contributor.
Yeah, I think that when you look at it, I struggle with the fact that he was an inactive in the Super Bowl. And they're not talking about a young player, talking about a guy who's been around the block. I just think it's going to be tough to get him onto the 53 this coming year. But we'll see.
Wow.
We'll see how that goes as the offseason progresses. Maybe that's something that where it's after the draft and a team that was hoping to get a pass rusher couldn't, and then you're able to kind of swing something there. But no, and I think Brandon Graham and his future up in the air, still publicly undecided at this point. And so edge is going to be a position. We talked about it on the show earlier, Bo, where that was the position where we thought we could see some kind of a splash here in free agency.
Listen, Azeez Ojulari still unsigned.
Still out there.
It's probably the guy who we all talked about as if they were going to add somebody, he's the one who maybe made the most sense. How great is the Josh Sweat sack celebration?
It's up there. It's
one
of
pretty
the better.
good.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely up there.
Fantastic.
I actually heard. I need to fact check this. I think that was a Jalen Hurts suggestion.
Really?
Yeah, I think Jalen suggested the sweat, the wiping the sweat off.
Interesting. Yeah. Pretty good. Hey, Julia, do we have the capability to play in the show the video from the Super Bowl of all the guys talking about what their favorite memories were of each game? Do we have that? Because that's a dynamic performance from Josh Sweat, and one of the ways that I would like to remember him.
Yeah, while we look this up, I can just say from like a personality perspective,
I love Josh Sweat. What a fun guy to talk to.
Yeah, Josh Sweat's really bright, but I don't think Jonathan Gannon should be signing Josh Sweat to be like the leader in the room per se, like the veteran in the room. I think Josh Sweat, I don't think he takes away from the room. I think he's a hard worker. I think he cares. I just think he's not going to be like the
thermostat.
Yes, he's not going to be the thermostat. Well said.
Do you know where Josh Sweat was this weekend?
I heard on a previous show he was in Columbia, the country, not the city.
That's right.
Yes,
with Milton Williams
at Patrick Johnson's wedding.
Yeah.
Do you think they had like a? Well, I guess who was paying for the drinks?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Although probably Patrick Johnson.
The hotel bar the night before. Who was paying for the drinks? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Poor Matt Leo's hooking the bill. Footing the bill. Meanwhile, these two guys are about to get hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, maybe not quite. Anyway, do you think we'll get more news on the edge from Josh Sweat? Not from Josh Sweat, from the Eagles. Do you think they will do something today?
I do think, I think the Eagles do something before the draft here. I don't know if they do something today. The name that's lingering is Azeez Ojulari. I think he's probably the best fit for them, but he is going to cost something. The Eagles have Nolan Smith, like you said. They're exceedingly high on J.L.X. Hunt. As Fran will tell us often during the next few weeks, this is a loaded edge rusher draft class. But as we talked about on the show earlier, you can't just wait until the draft to address a position. So I think the Eagles will look for a rotational piece, but I'm not sure it's going to be – well, that's actually not true. I could see them signing a starter still, but I think J.L.X. Hunt is the guy to watch taking a much bigger role next year.
Elsewhere across the league, a couple things to note. Most importantly for the Eagles, Aaron Banks signing a big deal with the Green Bay Packers, setting the guard market. That maybe leads to the dominoes that could lead to Mekhi Becton signing, whether that's here or elsewhere.
Do we have numbers on Banks yet?
We do. I have to get that.
But we have numbers on Patrick McCarry, which is over $10 million a year.
Okay.
Because all along we kind of anticipated that Mekhi Becton would be in that 14 to just around 18, above that. I mean, they're like 14 to 18, 14 to 20. 4 years, $77 for Banks.
For Banks, $477 for Banks. So that's like 19.
Yeah. All right. So
19.25.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles are not going to pay that for.
No,
they're not going to pay 15 for Mekhi Becton.
No,
I would be surprised if they pay 8.
Yes, and we've talked about at some point Cam Jurgens gets an extension. I have a hard time seeing 5 guys on the offensive line all making 8 digits, right? I mean, one of those spots you're going with a guy on a rookie contract or a discount veteran. So unless Mekhi Becton's willing to take a significantly below market deal, and I would think that he's probably in the market somewhere between McCarry and Aaron Banks, if not up there with Aaron Banks, that Mekhi Becton will be playing elsewhere.
Now somebody needs to be willing to pay him.
Exactly.
Someone else,
yes.
But Cam Robinson hasn't signed yet.
Jedrick Wills is still out there.
Jedrick Wills is still out there.
Yep.
Larry Borum.
The Jaguars are signing Chuma Udoga.
Chuma Udoga, most memorable to
Swing
me
tackle.
For his participation in the airplane etiquette survey at the Senior Bowl, and he was very anti-baby, which crossed him off my board.
Right.
Anti-baby in general or anti-baby on the airplane?
I mean, he was pretty much anti-baby in general, but mostly on an airplane.
What was his position?
Like they should have separate planes.
I don't know about separate planes, but I'll say this, okay? Before I had a baby, I had so much less tolerance for babies on the plane than it's one of those things you have to live it. I remember I was on a red eye coming back from, I don't know if it was the owners' meetings or one of them. This was before I had a baby, and this baby was crying the whole time. I'm not like saying they need their own planes, but I was pretty frustrated at the baby. Once you have a baby, you are so empathetic. It's like the difference between sympathy and empathy, right? You have so much empathy once you've been in that spot.
You opened up a can of worms.
No,
here.
I don't agree.
Okay.
I don't. Maybe it's because I'm such a better person. But
Okay.
yeah, I think from the beginning I recognize that
I
those
recognize
poor
those-
parents have to deal with this crying baby. They know that everybody's frustrated, and everybody's annoyed with them. They're the ones like who you feel.
I
sorry
get it,
for.
but if you haven't been in if you haven't tried to get a baby to stop crying, then I don't think you fully appreciate what it's like when a baby's crying. Right? I would assume that if you're a 22-year-old at the Senior Bowl, you're probably relatively ignorant to like what it's like bringing a baby on an airplane. I was more tolerant of it, I imagine, than Chuma Edoga was, but
Sound off in the chat. Do you have a soul? Yes or no? Fran, you want to weigh in on Babygate?
I don't want to pile on to Zach. But yeah, I mean, I'll just leave it there.
That's okay. All right. I believe we do have the video of the Eagles looking back on their favorite memories of the 2024 season game by game, which we are watching because of the tour de force put on by Josh Sweat. Stall. Leslie Stall. Stallings. Kevin Stallings? Is that a person?
yeah, he was the former basketball coach at Vanderbilt and Pittsburgh,
That's right.
and he got fired. I think Eastern Illinois as well at one point.
Bathroom stall.
Yeah, wait, I'm looking at the chat here.
Mikey face and put the babies in the cargo hold. Babies should be.
I was trying to say that I was more empathetic once I lived it. That's all I was saying. I was trying to give a human moment there, right?
I think. Okay. We'll play the video and leave Zach alone.
Saved by Julia.
No audio? All right, we're gonna pause. We're gonna try to get the original video. Play that instead. Eric Stahl, thank you for
Well,
that.
I think we have some super chats in there.
Oh, we have some super chats.
Oh, we have one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we already
we
addressed
already
that
got
one.
to that one. Okay.
That's okay. No big
No,
deal.
I thought there was another super chat. Could be wrong. Okay.
Nope.
No. Okay.
That's okay. How do you feel about the fit with Jonathan Gannon?
I think it's pretty good. I mean, and look, the fact that that Sweat played in this Vic Fangio scheme where he was asked to drop at times because they're doing more of that in Arizona than what JG did here in Philadelphia. I think that played, that helps out Josh in terms of that transition because that defense that they're running in Arizona is not the defense they ran here in Philadelphia in 2022 and 2021. It is different schematically in a lot of ways.
How so?
There's a lot more coverage variety. They do a lot of like weird like coverage rotations and things like that. A lot more variety from that standpoint. And then up front, it's not just all right. We're going to play these four, and it's just going to be 4-man rush. They do a lot in terms of like the sim pressures and dropping guys and sending play. They do a little bit more from a creative standpoint than what we've seen or what we saw here in Philadelphia.
Okay. Zach, anything else that you are just keeping your eye on here in the market?
I'm replaying the conversation in my head. I was trying to kind What else?
This is. I'm giving you a chance to move on.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. It's hanging with me. So some of these young edge rushers that are lingering on the market. I'm looking at the spreadsheet in front of me. And for instance, you mentioned Aziz. Aziz Ojulari, but in addition, Joe Tryon-Shianka is still hanging around the market. He's a former high pick who, as you said, can drop in the coverage. I'm curious to see what the Eagles do at corner. Like we mentioned on the previous show, I'm not expecting them to add someone over Keely Ringo, but add someone with Keely Ringo is my guess, someone to compete, and it's a pretty ripe market in that regard. I'm curious to see if the Eagles add another linebacker here, knowing that Nakobe Dean has injury questions. Now, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is someone who they're interested in the development, but maybe if they bring back Oren Burks or that type of player, because there's a few guys there who would fit that description. Obviously, what happens with Mekhi Becton, and we talked about Fred Johnson. I want to see if the Eagles add a swing tackle or if they wait until the draft or after the draft for that spot, because I do think, with Lane Johnson's age, and you saw last year, both Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata missed time. Fred Johnson had to start on both sides last year, right? And so what the Eagles do about that position is, I don't want to say as intriguing as right guard, but I think it's up there.
How do you feel about, what do you think the team thinks of Darian Kennard? Because he fits in here. Like, they kept him on the roster the whole time. Do you think they view him as the inherent swing tackle or potentially a competitor at right guard?
Well, I know he's someone that they like internally, and they liked his development. He's a former draft pick by Kansas City, right? He's not like just a journeyman.
Right.
He was on that roster, on that practice squad. The Eagles targeted him to a futures deal. So yeah, I mean, I'll defer to Fran in terms of the evaluation, but I know from talking to people behind the scenes, they really like the way he looked in camp. Both you and I had him on our 53, Bo, for a reason which you don't typically see for a futures player.
Yeah, I think that it would probably be a little bit of a stretch to say, like, all right, we're going to definitely have him penciled in for the Fred Johnson role, but I think you could pencil him in to compete for that. And then if you have another answer that could vie for that spot, you probably feel better about that as opposed to just putting all your eggs in that basket. I feel like I've said that phrase like 5 times today. So I'll try and find a replacement.
Well, I mean, you paid so much money for the eggs, you got to use them.
No, that's right.
And then we're also waiting to see what happens at tight end with Dallas Goedert. But I still think the best fit for the Eagles of anyone out there right now is Draymond Jones.
Yep.
From the player, from the background with Vic Fangio, from the age profile, from the fact that he doesn't count against the compensatory pick formula. And the more he lingers, that's the player I would watch.
We do have a couple super chats now. Shay wants to know, do you think there is a market for a babies-only airline?
Well, you have to have the adults flying with them, right? So my guess is no, but honestly, if you've ever taken a flight to Orlando, that's that's almost all kids often, right? And like, I got no issue with kids on the plane. I want to make that abundantly clear. Okay, I just have more empathy ever since then.
New Samuel L. Jackson movie, Babies on a Plane.
What's this next one here?
Vince says, what are your free agent targets who will not mess with the comp picks?
Yeah, Draymond Jones is the first one that jumps out to me.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Who on the offensive line? Is there someone who's been cut on the O-line right now?
Ooh, I don't think there is anybody on the line.
I mean,
Alex
Shaq
Cappa
Mason
was the guy.
Yeah, Shaq Mason, but I don't know if he's a guy that they would go after. I know Jonathan Allen. I'm expecting Jonathan Allen to make more money. Javon Hargrave fits into that category.
Yeah.
At edge rushers, Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith have both been released, so they wouldn't count against the against that formula. DeMarcus Walker, I believe, has a background with Vic Fangio, right?
I think he was
Yes.
there for a
Yes.
year.
Okay.
Yep.
So, and does he have a background with Clint Hurd as well? Was he in Seattle?
Walker?
Yeah.
I don't think so, no.
Claire says, worse on a plane, crying baby or mad toddler?
So Claire, help me out here. What's the mad toddler doing on the plane?
Kicking your seat from behind you.
Yeah.
And just being loud.
Probably the crying baby.
See, I think as a parent,
I would go the other way.
I think the mad toddler is actually more frustrating for the parent too.
Oh no, I meant for the
yeah, I
patron.
know,
Yeah,
but I actually I think for the
yeah.
I think for the patron too. I think for the other.
But you know what? I am going to defend myself or here. Okay.
You're defending yourself against yourself.
No.
We have said nothing throughout the majority of this whole topic.
Yeah.
No, because this is the thing. I always defended the babies on the plane. Okay, because whenever there was someone complaining, I was like, just put on headphones, right? You won't hear the baby crying. Just put on headphones. It's not a big deal, right? So I always said that.
Except 10 minutes ago.
No. It was so the red eye.
Right.
Back on the red eye, I wasn't.
You didn't know about headphones?
No, I wasn't. The AirPods would fall out, and I was afraid of losing the AirPods. So I think that's what I don't know. Or maybe
Which, of course, was the baby's fault.
No, I'm just.
It's a choking hazard in their defense.
I don't know. Next one.
No, those were the. Do we have the video to play now? All right, let's play the video, and we'll come back. And unless there's other news, we will close this out. I know Fran's got another show to get to.
A great experience in Brazil.
Fun flight.
Zach Bonds sacked in the game.
Damn, we lost.
Week 3.
How we do that?
After they had scored to tighten up the game, or I think gain the lead by a few points, Dallas's drag route that he caught and took it for like 60 yards.
Damn. Again. I won't even mad. I'm like, damn.
Looked in the mirror at ourselves. First start.
Saquon Barkley.
Confusing Sidney Brown with his twin brother.
Devontae Smith's catch in the back of the end zone, where Jalen just kind of like chucked it up there. They made a crazy catch. That was definitely dope for sure.
That was like the most like highlights I've seen in a game because it was Smitty's crazy catch, Saquon jumping over a guy backwards, N'Kobe's one-hand catch in the back of the end zone. So I would just say highlights.
Shit, at first it was a dog fight, but then we destroyed them.
Intense.
Oh, it was a freaking physical game.
At the Rams, good test for us out in L.A.
Ooh, we were doubted. Cooper's hit.
A weird game.
Ooh, nail biter. Seals was a good test. I feel like Mike Tomlin team, they always play tough. And state opponent as well, so a lot of bragging rights there. Yeah, we let them come back. We had like 5 turnovers, didn't we? Yeah.
Second Kelly Green game, CD's pick 6, won the NFC East that night.
Destroyed.
My first start, yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was great.
Destroyed.
Dallas. Stiff arming them all the way down the field.
Good rematch, but we destroyed them too, right?
Oh, lit. That's when I got my set. In the snow, too. Snow game, it felt like a video game.
Saquon's first run when he caught the pitch and just took it to the house, I was like, he's playing NCAA or Madden on rookie.
Destroyed.
There you go.
It's great content right there.
Great content. Good stuff from Josh. It also makes you excited about Jalix Hunt.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Now we have breaking news that happened during that video. In the NFC East, the Washington Commanders, how are they going to deal with this fierce Eagles pass rush? Well, they're going to trade for Laramie Tunsil, waiting on the exact return. Oh, so it looks a second rounder and a fourth rounder to the Texans, plus a third rounder. Hold on.
Did it break?
Yeah. Let's see. Da-da-da. Anyway, the Commanders are getting Laramie Tunsil.
It's a big get for look.
Yeah.
We talked about it in the playoffs. We talked about it late in the season when they had their second game. I do think Washington is going to be a problem, a team that the Eagles are going to have to deal with here in the coming years. I think Deebo Samuel is probably on the wrong side of the hill, but adding a player like Laramie Tunsil, who has proven that he can be one of the best pass protectors in football, that's a big get for this team and an upgrade from. I mean, they were playing Brandon Coleman, who was a rookie third-round pick, who was up and down. It wasn't terrible, but I mean, that's a huge boom for them here, and we'll see what they gave up package-wise.
And we always talk about when you have a quarterback on a rookie contract, that's your opportunity to add big, high-priced players. So Washington's taking advantage of this window. You saw them add Deebo Samuel. They add Laramie Tunsil. Those picks have to come to fruition, but it makes sense to add expensive players now, and then you try to take advantage of this 3-year period before you have to pay Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I think there's a way to spin this. That this is good news for the Eagles.
Really?
If you're the Eagles, you're kind of hoping that the Commanders over believed in the end of their season, like that they were the second best team in the conference. They went to the NFC Championship game. Let's push in some chips and take advantage of Jaden Daniels being on the rookie contract, but also maybe their team is not really that good. You know, they got a good draw. They went out and they beat an injured Lions team. And Laremy Tunsil is 30 years old, and it looks like they're trading maybe a second, a third, and a fourth.
So for him, it was weird wording from Rap Sheet. So he's got a second rounder and a fourth rounder to the Texans, plus a third rounder this year. I'm assuming he meant a third rounder next year would be my guess.
So
a second,
some combination of a second, third, and fourth over the next 2 years. Like that's real, especially the second rounder. That's real value. If you're thinking about them building their team from scratch, their team was so old last year. A bunch of veterans on one-year deals, and now they're trading in future trips for a 30-year-old?
Well, yeah. To that point, if I were Adam Peters, I would much rather use that money on free agents than the Deebo
money
Samuel
as opposed to picks.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, certainly not high premium picks. Now I understand a franchise left tackle is going to cost you that. Tunsil, I didn't watch that much Houston last year. I saw Greg Rosenthal said he had a relatively down year compared to past years.
That whole group was pretty bad.
Yeah, 5-time Pro Bowler.
So it is a second and a fourth next year and a third this year.
Oh,
and they get back, and they get a second and a fourth next year.
Oh,
and a third this year.
I like that even less.
And they get back a fourth and Laremy Tunsil.
Yeah.
So the second rounder in 2026, like if they're not that good this year, that could be a really good pick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also their defense got a little worse because Jeremy Chin.
I was going to say, your boy
goes to the Raiders. Yeah, Tom Brady knows what's up.
That's one of your good. That's one of your best picks.
That's good.
I think. I mean, listen, Laremy Tunsil's good. They're a better team now, but I think big picture that makes you feel better about the way that Washington is running things.
We'll see.
Just me.
By the way, this might open up a can of worms. Okay, this might open.
Are we going back to the baby?
No.
Okay.
But you actually appreciate this. This was the mistake that Joshua Harris and his ownership group made with the 76ers.
Oh.
They bought the team. The team had success in the first year because if you remember, Derrick Rose got hurt in the first round of the playoffs. Okay,
I love this.
The Sixers go to the second round. They overachieve. Anyone watching that Sixers team, they take the Celtics to 7 games. Okay, they overachieve in a big way. So you know what they do? They decide they're going to push their chips in, and they go for Andrew Bynum, and it explodes on them. Yeah. And it's like because they had such they were like, we figured out the league. We're ready. We're ready now. You would hope that Adam Peters and there's people in there who are like, but if the notion is that they had one good year and now they're ready to strike, I would say that there is like a sustainable way to build a franchise. And so,
man, I'll do it again.
Because the whole.
Why did they give him a southern accent?
I don't know.
When Phil Jason Isaacs there.
The whole process started because the Sixers misevaluated that one playoff run.
Zach, I think it's one of your best takes you've ever had.
I think I'll leave on that one.
You really bounced back.
Yeah, the whole thing was worth it to get that take. I think that's exactly right. Yeah. All right. That'll do it for this Josh Sweat emergency pod. We're staying here. If something else happens, we'll be here. But until then, thanks for watching and listening. Thanks to Julia and Chris. For Fran and Zach, I'm Bo. We will talk to you later. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.